this on. Today we're going to do a little bit of a different format, but not super different. I want to make sure we have time for anybody that wants to ask anything or has any questions or has something they want to work on, a particular project would be great. But there's been kind of three big through lines that we've been seeing to our discussions this week. One of them was coming, a lot of people have been talking about project management. And this all began from, I asked the question somewhere early in the week about, do you think you're good at business? Right? Because just what do you think about that? And there was so much engagement to that post. There was so many people that had so many different responses, whether it's kind of self-loathing or hyper confidence or, there's just so many different, I guess, emotional ideas that came up with the idea of being in business for yourself. If you're an artist, does being in a business mindset somehow affect or hurt the quality of what your work might be? I mean, it seemed emotional. And so anyway, I kind of went down this rabbit hole of that. And then I also noticed that there was a lot of people that seemed to be struggling with the idea of project management, which is something I'm really interested in. And I'm sure that many of you all know about this idea of what Kanban boarding is, but enough people didn't that I thought I would do a very quick, brief introduction and explanation about what Kanban boarding is and how you can use it. And even if you already know how to use it, it may give you some inspiration, because I'm going to share with you how we do it in the technology world too, where you have very elaborate models of being able to gather information and collate it all together and put it into a visualized workflow that we can work through and what that looks like. So, and then lastly, I'm hoping Steve's going to talk to this too. I had another post after the whole business thing and the project thing. I really got set on this idea of value, right? Value that we offer. I've personally been experiencing just a run of, for the last month or two, of new clients wanting to work with me, which I'm so grateful for. This is people that want to take guitar lessons with me. I've never had so many requests for new lessons in the last 15 years, probably. I don't know what it is, but I've really appreciated that. And I think people are really appreciating what I'm able to offer to them. And this is one of the first points in my life that I've been able to say, wow, that's cool that they appreciate that, because it's hard to feel, to experience someone being grateful for the work that you do, right? I don't often comfortably fall into that position. So I want to talk the idea about, if we have time today, and it might be like the idea of value, both in the value that we offer our clients, and the experiment that I did with myself was I started looking around my world at what I value. The people that are, affecting my children's lives, the people that are my mentors, what do I value when I go to a store? In these weird times that we're living through, I go to the grocery store that I think has the best, that makes me feel the most comfortable to go into it. I don't think anything about money or what it costs. I think about the place where I feel the most comfortable to go to, right? Personal values, and exploration of that, and how we can fold that into how we do our own business. So it's a lot today, and a lot of ideas, and I want everyone here to be heard, because maybe you have other things or projects you want to work on. But really quickly, before I dive in, why don't we just take a quick minute? Everybody just take 30 seconds or so, say hello. We'll go through, tell us what you're up to. If there's something really pressing you want to discuss today, let me know. And if not, Cheryl, why don't you just jump in, and then when you're done, pass the baton to whoever's next to you in Zoom.
Okay, hi, thanks. I'm working on marketing 3 courses right now. So I just hired somebody to do the email and the flyer, and it's all connected to the website, and she's doing it all, and I love her, and it's such a good match. And for 15 years, I didn't do this and tried to do it myself, and it's like a game changer. So I feel so freed up to actually build the courses now. So that's this week.
Awesome. Welcome, Cheryl. That's great. Looking forward to hearing more about that. Shelby, would you want to tell us what's up with you?
Yeah, I don't know. We had a lot of really sudden financial things fall all at once. So the 3 months of buffer I thought I had to get my business up and running kind of disappeared overnight. So I'm working for my sister-in-law right now, trying to simultaneously build my tutoring business, which isn't working great. But at least for a couple months, we don't have a lot of options. So I've got a few students, and then I'm also working for her.
So busy time.
Yes.
Overwhelmed or
No.
dealable? I said, is it handleable or does it feel overwhelming?
Yeah, it's handleable. I don't feel like I have a lot of extra time or strength to like pursue leads for tutoring properly, like naturally. But I'm able to still maintain, like I'm still doing well and planning lessons well for my current students. And I'm doing some marketing, but just not nearly what I was hoping.
Got it.
But it's handleable.
Awesome. Yeah, you sound like there's a lot happening. Well, hang in there.
Yeah.
Awesome. Karen, do you want to share with us? Say hi real quick.
Hi. Okay, so yay, I finished a big project last week. The virtual opera that I was in, that is possibly one of the most stressful things that I've ever done. And I'm not entirely sure if I'm completely happy with my recording, but it's like one of those things where I know that I put in all the work that I needed to. I know that I prepared well and that I was musically on my game. It's just that recording an entire opera, I mean, it's a 45-minute opera or 50-minute opera. It's a short one. And we had it in 3 different segments. But the way it worked is basically we're hearing the piano, we're seeing the conductor, but each of us is recording our part on its own. And so I'm having to like imagine to and trying to facially react, not be completely dead-faced for the rest of it, kind of going through and knowing kind of what else is going on at the different musical points, even where I'm not singing, which it's Puccini on top of all of this, which if you know Puccini, it's through composed, meaning there's not a whole lot of like well-defined melodies or anything that's really catchy in it. So yeah, that was definitely a new experience. I'm glad it's over. I went back, there was one thing where I'm like, oh, I pronounced that weird and I'm not entirely sure. It must have just been an in the moment thing where I was trying to stay with the conductor on a recitative type spot. All to say, I'm glad it's over. I'm decently proud of what I did. Is it my absolute best work? Not really, but at the same time, I know that I did exactly as much as I could with the time I was given. I did good preparation, and I'm proud of that. And now I'm looking at, okay, well, what is the next step for my other stuff on the opera front? I'm still working on another role, just my personal study. On the teaching front, keeping up with a couple of students and just still kind of not developing my pedagogy. I kind of got that, but trying to develop the website idea around my art and trying to figure out what story I'm telling and where it's all going. I can't quite tell where I know it's going somewhere very specific, but all I can do really right now is put one foot in front of the other and try not to get overwhelmed. And then every once in a while just feel like I just want to sit in the corner and cry because I miss performing. I really miss performing.
Karen, it hit me this week too. I was like midweek, I just almost had a moment of despondency where I was like, wow, that's right. There's no gigs, can't have parties. Like, man, miss performing. It just kind of all of a sudden hit me because I think we're all just plowing through just what you said, one foot in front of the other. And trying not to just trying to stay positive and upbeat and living through it. But it's really hard taking away performances from opera singers.
Yeah. And at the same time, trying to be positive, but trying not to let it get toxic, like giving yourself enough moments where you actually acknowledge like, this sucks. This is, as used to, as much as I'm used to waiting for the next opportunity and just continuing the personal discipline in the times of waiting, like my career was actually starting to pick up a little bit of momentum right before all this happened. So, and it still kind of is. That's the reason I got this other virtual gig, a company that I'd worked with right before everything kind of closed down. So being thankful, but just also being emotionally honest with oneself in general. So
beautiful. Well, I'm glad you're here. Hang in there. Hey, Steve, since you're as a fellow dad, did you hear Karen say opportunity, and did that actually Did that get you as hard as it got me?
No,
But
I totally missed it. That's
Because that's your job. You have a really funny podcast on that now. So
Yeah,
go ahead,
yeah.
Steve. Tell us.
Oh yeah, my podcast with my 8-year-old daughter, Dad Joke, Bad Joke. I just tell her bad jokes and she groans. But this last one we did on dog jokes was probably our finest work. She laughed at most of them, and she listens to a ton of podcasts, and yeah, it's for kids. So we're having a good time with that. Yeah, I think I've met all of you before, but yeah, I mean, just like a lot of people during pandemic land, just kind of leveling up some of my technology chops. This last week, I'm learning to use Logic, so I just tracked like a huge woodwind corral, kind of practicing just tracking and getting to know. And I've been using a lot of free software for a while, but boy, this is a huge level up finally to do this. And I've never really done much MIDI before, so I'm learning how to do that. I'm just going to kind of produce a project in my studio, this quarantine project. But yeah, the first thing I recorded at home, even on the free software, trying to figure out what I was doing. I did a couple singles. Jazz Tunes, friend of mine, that's actually coming out on vinyl. I didn't realize that he's using Bandcamp to produce this, so it's kind of cool that's happening. And then I've got this online course that I released a couple months ago that a lot of band teachers are using to supplement remote learning. It's an improvisation course, and that's still, I haven't done much marketing or advertising yet, but it's like still it's kind of picking up, and people are it's like a viable product and income stream, and it's super exciting. I'm getting really good feedback from people, so I'm trying to figure out, okay, the next step with that. I mean, it was a huge undertaking to record this thing, and yeah, so I'm excited to see where that goes. And I'm thinking, yeah, there's a lot of things that I met, like what Karen was saying. I used to perform all the time and travel. I'm realizing yeah, it's almost like embarrassed to say, a lot of the gigs I was playing, I don't really miss a lot of them. There's some of them, it's almost like I have all my weekends. I don't have to do a sound check at 4:30 on Sunday. I'm just at home and do stuff with my family. But man, I missed some of the jam sessions and the traveling I was doing. There was some really cool opportunities. But I was realizing a lot of the just week to week, month to month stuff, maybe some of them weren't that important to begin with, because I'm realizing what I'm missing. And some of those I'm like, I don't really miss that. I kind of like doing some of these home projects or just hanging out with my family or listening to music or whatever. So
The editing of not having to say yes to every gig, right? Now it's just been edited for you. Yeah,
I feel like, I need to look like there's some gigs on the calendar. Otherwise it's,
oh my goodness,
giving up on performing. I'm like, oh, well.
Awesome. Yeah, I can't wait to talk more about what you were just saying, Steve. That's killer. Hey, Mike, are you there? Speaking of projects, want to say a quick hello from Santa Fe?
Yeah, I'm here in Santa Fe.
Hi, Mike.
I'm staying at the La Casa, and, it's really terrible. There's a mountain right there. And this is still working the teaching while I'm here, but it's good to take a break. It's been really important in, seeing stars at night and not hearing the traffic and the sirens and the chaos of the big city that I live in. But, today I was supposed to have a recording session, but the lead vocalist told me yesterday he might have COVID. Good news, he doesn't. But upper respiratory, so life intervenes. Steve, you're talking about recording sessions. There's always something that comes up. Everything's not as according to plan. But I'm here today just because I have the day off now, so it's fantastic. So you guys are my vacation. So I'm here to hear and learn and love, and we're here to hang out and think about things that are maybe a little bit different out of our wheelhouse. So here we are.
Welcome, Mike. I'm glad you're here. That's awesome. I can tell in your voice that you're somewhere more relaxing than you were last week when you were.
Yeah, well, I just made breakfast for everybody, so everybody's sleeping now. So.
Oh, beautiful. That's a good vibe to carry. Well, hey,
I love going back to bed after breakfast. So
yeah,
providing that for your family. That's really special.
That's right. Very good. All right, guys. That's all I got to say because I go on forever. So I'm ready to rock and roll.
Hey, Beth.
Hi, everybody. This week, okay, self-care is hard, and I learned it hurts. So I got my flu shot, my shingles shot. I just have to tell you, yeah, that wasn't fun together. But anyway, so self-care is hard to do because we get so busy, and that was just my first step. Then what else? Let me see here. Oh, right after our Fons Mastermind last week, I had to come back on because the universe just shot something right out at me, and I thought, maybe that's good Fonz vibes. I don't know, but I got this, I'm working on this video thing for executive function kind of tips and tricks for parents. And Shelby, I'll have to talk to you too. And I'm working on it with another coach. So it's a collaboration, and we're going to just do short little videos that kind of really help parents with filling up the strategy toolbox for things like procrastination, routines, and systems management and stuff like that. So yeah, so I've been just kind of plugging along with the content, and the day, I think it was the day after, I don't know, I can't forget, my timeline's really screwed up right now, but someone reached out to me and said they're part of this moms and sons group, and they would like to ask me to speak. And there's about 100 people that come to these Zoom meetings. So they asked me to speak, and I thought, oh, okay, I could offer this video because this is my demographic here. So so anyway, she's like, sure, you can offer a pack, like maybe a discount at the end of your speaking gig, which is a short one. But I thought, oh my God, okay. So the marketing thing was daunting for me, and anyway, this kind of takes care of it for right now. Now I'm under a time crunch, and I feel like I'm working weekends, but that's okay. It's all good. So that was pretty cool.
Because this opportunity just popped up.
It just popped up like last week, and because I've been working on this video thinking, I'll figure out the marketing stuff. I have enough connections. I probably can figure it out, but it still was bothering me in the back of my head. So this will just be fine. I mean, honestly, she said there's about 100 plus people that attend these Zoom meetings and really want to hear a speaker about this kind of thing. Yeah. Anyway, is that cool?
Beth, well, you know what? Yeah. Before I leave you for a second, what are you seeing as far as kids and executive functioning? What's the landscape like right now as far as, what are you seeing with people? Is it different this year than it was last year?
Yeah, I'm going to say it's a cluster, but okay. It's everybody's really maxed out on as far as trying to manage the parents trying to help their kids manage their school work and everything, school and being on Zoom all the time. So I think parents are pretty stressed out with that and finding that some of the challenge areas that their kids have regarding executive function skills, whether it's sometimes comorbid, of course, with ADHD or anxiety and a lot of other things, but they're finding that those challenge areas are really highlighted now, and it's driving the parents like crazy and feeling helpless and stuff like that. I was there. My kids are older now, but I don't know if I could have done this pandemic with my kids. I mean, I think they just would break out the BB guns and start shooting each other or something. I don't know. It'd have been horrible. Anyway, so yeah, it's hard. Everybody's wanting some help, and that's why we just decided, let's just throw this out there. Putting things off, missing work, motivation, all those kind of things they're just sort of, that's a common thread for everybody with what they struggle with now.
Yeah, I don't know, if we all, a lot of us work with children, a lot of us work with people, and I had a post yesterday about, I'm noticing you can see people when they're doing their deal with their mouse. Like kids are multitasking, like messaging, maybe playing a little Minecraft, trying to turn their video off. I mean, there's so much. So every time I meet with anybody now, I was like, okay, here's my hands. Like I'm totally focused on you and just trying to get that energy up, because it's really tough. I'm sure you're doing just as much support for parents right now as you are for kids, I'm guessing.
Yeah. Well, and I know the screen thing is probably I bet everybody kind of has that issue. I ask kids to get on and like share their screen with me sometimes. Like, hey, what are you doing? Share your screen. Like, just let me see. and then I'll have them do something like, let's type in your document here. And then they do it. I can do it, but they do it because I know then their screen is occupied with me. That kind
Beautiful.
Of. Anyway, I wanted to reach out to Shelby too. Shelby, I often do refer people like over to tutors. So why don't you message me after? Okay.
Yeah, sounds great.
Hey, and we just had a new visitor, Nicole. I think this is maybe your first time coming here, but I want to introduce you. Nicole's an awesome marketer and a new friend. And I was connecting her this week because she's doing some great work for somebody else in our community with their website and their rebranding. Nicole, I don't want to put you on the spot, but when we start this thing out, we usually just go around really quick and take like 30 seconds and say, hello, this is me. I'm here, but so welcome. And if you feel comfortable with that, just go ahead and say hi. I'm assuming you will.
Yeah. Oh, thanks so much, Eric. Yeah, this is my first time joining. I always like see you post and then I try to come, but then I like miss it because, time zones, I'm like, cannot compute. But anywho, I'm glad to join and be here. Hello, my name is Nicole. I currently live in Austin. I am a flutist, but primarily what I do now, I have a digital marketing agency where we help other musicians, creatives with brand and web design, graphic design, photography, things like that. And I also do online courses teaching other musicians like how to do all that stuff for themselves. So super excited to be here.
Nicole, I'm just going to, I saw the work you did for Chelsea and I was like, I just had to write you a note. I was like, man, you did a great job. And is there 3 of you on your team? Is that what you're doing?
Yeah, and we're all musicians. So yeah, one of us, Jolene, she does the graphic design. She's kind of like the creative director, the graphics and photography, brand photography. I am kind of like the marketing, like big picture conversion copywriting person. And then Taylor actually goes in and like builds the sites for us. And yeah, your message that you sent, that meant so much because usually, I mean, when we build websites, it's kind of like, we do it and put it out there, and you don't really get many like, wow, this was great, so that really meant a lot.
Well, what I really appreciated is I appreciated that your intention is to help people get energy, but be authentic with this is what I picked up, but it's convertible. Like it's converting, like you're moving them towards an action in that case, which was contacting them.
Yep.
And I found myself drawn to the website and I was like, oh, they got me. And so,
Yay!
and like, this is one of those things that, I don't know if you've all started companies, you've all put out records, you've all put out stuff in life. It is never a great idea to depend on people that you're close to give you feedback and to support you, meaning like buy your records. You're like, wow, my best friend's never bought any of my records or, whatever. And, it is really a great practice for yourself when you see great work around you to share it and to tell them, because what Nicole was just saying, she's like, we don't get a whole lot of feedback, but like, it's really good. So when you see something awesome, why not give them some feedback or a little shout out? So it's something I've been working on because I also know, like, having, running a software company or something, getting people, trying to pull people you're really close into to using your product or service can also create stress, right? You don't want to make it weird, but you also, I'd much rather buy my friends' recordings than Taylor Swift's. As much as I love Taylor Swift's new recording, I'm not going to lie. It's pretty fun. Anyway, welcome, Nicole. I'm glad you're all here. I want to go ahead and jump into some topic. This is great because I think we can really wrap all this stuff into a little bit of everything. So what I want to do, my little 5-minute presentation today, is I want to share with you guys this idea about Kanban boarding and project management. And I want to take it from its most very simple, most basic element of ideation to what we do at Fons for running a technology company. I've learned a lot of this mostly from our co-founder, who is somewhat of a household name in Silicon Valley. He taught me a lot of this stuff, which is, he's used to managing teams of 500 people, right? And managing these huge projects in other companies he's run. And over the last 4 years, he's given me a lot of feedback and a lot of training on how to manage a large scale operation. But so first of all, Kanban boarding, it's a Trello board, right? It's got a fancy name. The concept's been around for a really long time. It's really rooted in Japanese engineering, right? The concept of the Kanban boarding itself is attributed to the Toyota engineering team, right? Which is how they managed a project of doing something. And I want to put this in a way that's understandable and hopefully meaningful to you. So anytime we're doing a project, building a website, putting out a course, mowing the lawn, and that's how I'm going to start this. I'm going to start with something that I absolutely hate, which is yard work, and talking about the things that are very useful to us is breaking them down into actionable items, right? And I know a lot of us use our Trello boards kind of like a Pinterest board, right? To just put in ideas or stuff. What we're talking about is Kanban boarding, which is stack ranking and visualizing a workflow, right? And so I'm just going to share my screen and give you an example of something that makes me extremely unhappy, which is doing my yard work. So I put this together this morning to try. Can you guys see this okay? This is just a Trello board, right? Now, Kanban boarding is a visualization of a job, and then this is mowing my lawn, okay? And what I did is I start with, in general in Kanban boarding, you'll have like what you're going to do next, what you're currently working on, and what is done. This is in its most simplest nature, taking any project you're doing, breaking into actionable items, and then stack ranking them in terms of importance and order, right? And ranking them. As you work with a team, you also start working with who you can delegate to what. So our Kanban boards begin to get colorful, and as we start to delegate. But I begin with something called backlog and ideas. You know, I have Kanban boards for songwriting. I have them for teaching. I have them for Fons. I have probably 20 or 30 of them that I use regularly for different projects I'm managing. But this is for mowing my lawn, right? And I threw this together. And the idea is, yeah, I've already charged my mower battery, right? So that's done. I'm trying to move everything over, right? And as I look at this, the other things I'm working on right now is I've sharpened my mower blade and I'm removing all the rocks and sticks from my yard, right? The Kanban board is always about focusing on what's most important first and stack ranking and doing only what's on top of the board. And this is what, when we started Fons, our co-founder, Jared, I'll bring him in here sometime. He is a genius at managing these things, a genius. He would take one look at this and be like, dude, you're not sharpening your mower blade. We don't have time for that. That's out. Sorry. Waste your time. You just sharpened it 2 weeks ago. So you're going to work on getting the rocks and sticks out of your yard first. You do that. And then he's like, okay, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mow the lawn. I'm going to do that. And what you're doing is you only work at the very top level thing, unless you're waiting for something if you're in a team. And we'll talk about that in a second. I want to kind of answer some questions. But in this case, we're talking about one project. And this is where we don't want to get confused, because is my goal to mow the lawn or is it to weed whack the edging? Right? And if I said, oh, my project is mowing the lawn, this doesn't really fit. I'm not going to edge to it. I'm not going to do that because that's not in that project. What I would love, and what I see in everybody in our group with these great projects, with these big things they're doing, is the ability to say no, right? Is to look at your list of things you're doing and say, no, that doesn't go to my project. This is also a window into how we spend our day, right? For right now, it's hard to keep focused. And when we have this, we're like, okay, I'm just going to mow the lawn. And that's all I'm going to do till I get that done, right? Now, as I can also plan and be like, what am I going to do next? Am I going to rake this thing up? What I really want to do is I'd like to take a nap. The most important thing that I want for me is to rest because it's the weekend, right? So I'm going to stack rank taking a nap before I do anything else. So it all comes back to these fundamentals of our project. And hopefully this was a dumb enough example that you're thinking about your own projects and not this, right? That's what I'm trying to do here is say, Steve, your course, or how we might manage building out a large scale website. I'm sure those processes, or recording an album, putting these things together, who you need to contact. And every day going through, I want to actually share with you what our current Fons Kanban board looks like. And
I've never sharpened my mower blade. That's what I'm thinking about.
What? Oh man, that's another call, Steve. We'll definitely do that.
Yeah.
So can you guys see this now? So this is our current working board, and I've got it blurred out a little bit because there's some stuff in there I can't really share with you. But we start, and this Kanban board's a little more complex. Believe it or not, each one of these rows goes down like another 45 or so cards, right? But as we move our way across, on the right-hand side, these are all things that are done. These are all things that are either pushed into live and are now new features on the platform in the last 2 months. Right? We go through. What's that?
Can you at least just read what's the name of your columns up there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So, we start here on the very left-hand side, and this can be adjusted for everybody. And I'll give you some kind of examples of what different companies do. This is kind of a technical software company flow, which we start here on the left-hand side with either ideas or suggestions. This could be something when a customer writes in and says, hey, would love to have this on my public booking link, or I wish we had, I wish you could do this. And so here's where we're constantly sorting, right? And the next idea over is what we call it's our backlog, right? This is just stuff that this is what's going to come next into this row. And this is actually just a continuation of the backlog. These are both the same. We also have this row here, the second row in is called the ice box. And the ice box is stuff we're not going to get to in the next 2 to 3 months, right? There's probably 300 things that we'd love to do, like cool stuff, that's not going to happen. And so I maintain an ice box in all of my Kanban boards, and I'm constantly going through it. Like, so if there's a feature request that someone writes in for the first time, we put it into the new ideas. If we don't hear more about it in the next month or so, it'll often go into the ice box if it's something we can't prioritize. Meaning we'd like to do it someday, but we just don't really have the resources to do it now. And then you have your in next. What the next project is that your engineering team or your design team is going to do, right? So this is their current things. Right now we're working on a QuickBooks integration that's coming out next month, and a unified communications system. Or whenever you see red, that means it's a little bug or something that we're ironing out in the system, right? In progress means we're testing it, right? We've got the flow going. In next means we're testing it in our testing environment, right? So for you, that could be like receiving feedback, right? Before, like Steve, on your project, your course really, although you've hit it live already, you're kind of in next, right? And that you've got it out there, it's generating a lot of revenue itself, and it really could be ready to go to that next level of marketing.
Yeah, I still feel like it's in the testing phase, actually, but yeah, it's
maybe, yeah. Next in next is our final testing, so we have phases of that. So, and if anybody wants to see them deeper, I have hundreds of examples of these. But what I was just hoping to do in like less than 10 minutes was to give you this idea that hopefully would pique your curiosity or interest in how to taking a project, or how to really optimize the time you're using. Whether it's this course you're building, Beth, right? This video course. If you start breaking the tasks down and you're not allowed to do anything but a task that's on that board, what you see is how much time we spend doing tasks on our board, right? And an hour of focused time working from this is like 3 hours of focused time working on something else, right? Because you're only doing what matters most. All I ever talk about is focus, right? And this helps us focus. The other thing is you start getting stuff done. So I wanted to just kind of open it up if you had some questions, or if there was kind of because there's a ton of ways you can research this and learn about this yourself. And I didn't want to overwhelm you with information and make it too nerdy, but was hopefully, yeah, go ahead, Steve. You're muted though.
Yeah, I'd like to talk just a little bit more about the stack ranking. I mean, just visually the most important stuff at the top, but also maybe this is a bigger conversation. The decisions are what do you choose to put at the top, and then what do you dump? I've got some ideas for doing that, but I'd like to hear your process.
Well, I think, I guess I'll just share Jared's, because he's truly something else in that he has a myopic focus on executing large scale projects, right? And the ability to say, do I have the time to do it? To look at an item of work and say, how much time will that take? And how much closer will that get me to my goal, right? Because it's important not to confuse this Kanban boarding with processes, right? What we're doing, because that's what this is becoming. In its initial stage, we're just like getting a project done. But what we want to do is you're going to start learning processes of yourself, right? The Kanban board, like for Toyota, is a process of how to build a car that's done the exact same way every time, right? And hopefully after you start doing this a few times, you see what works and what doesn't. So the great thing about using Trello or something like that is you can take notes within each one of those cards, right? And say how important it is. You can give it a number ranking from 1 to 5, when it needs to be done. But I would assume, what's a project that you're thinking about that this is. You're still muted.
Yeah. So for thinking about even like which project, like educational or performance projects, which ones to take on. I have some ideas of personal projects or other courses I want to develop, and I can't do them all. So it's like, well, which what do I do? What do I do next?
Right. Well, I guess that would be a project of picking projects.
Yeah. Okay. So
right.
That's a whole nother.
That's a different form of stack ranking, right? So each one of those projects would have their own board, and I use one board for multiple projects many times, right? Because we're managing multiple things, and I will make a conglomeration board of all my projects I'm working on for my day. But it's really helpful to say, okay, this is my new educational product that I'm doing, that I'm launching here, right? And these are all the things I need to do, and seeing that in one spot. So when you're sitting down to work on that educational project, you know exactly what you need to do next and what you can't work on until something else is done.
No, that's super helpful, because I've done Trello boards on other projects that I've been part of, but as far as looking at using that for a big picture, this is super, super helpful, because I need to take one large concept and put all the projects within this. Yeah,
and you learn that you don't do it unless you write it down. As far as like, it's got to be, because we think we're just going to get a whole bunch of stuff done and record some things, but you've got to break it into the pieces, and that seeing that visual flow of seeing things move from left to right. And right, you have something that's been sitting in that next column that you haven't touched for 3 weeks. You're not going to do it. Delete it. You're just not going to do it, right? So there's a reality after a certain time. You're like, you just cut it. You archive it. But that's a great question. Anybody else want to kind of pipe in or have a question or a thought?
Well, I'm just thinking it's interesting because I'm thinking about the process I went through just recently to record this part for Suor Angelica, and how essentially I don't always write it down. And this is what I'm trying to get better at. Like, I've just got, as my mom put it once, I've got a very high capacity for holding a whole lot of details in my brain all at the same time and not getting confused by them. But I'm trying to actually, like, there's limitations to that. And if I already have that capacity, like, how can I maximize on this? And thinking about, like, again, the last week of recording, what could I have done better? Well, I could have dress rehearsed my setup a week earlier if I'd been a little more on my game. A lot of that time was spent just thinking about, like, okay, what am I going to use to record this? What do I have equipment wise? And then 2 days before I recorded it, I'm like, okay, I want to record on Monday. Well, Monday was spent mostly ironing my backdrop sheet and trying to find a workable setup for both my laptop and my iPad. And I'm like, dang, like, this has taken so many hours, and now I don't have any more time or energy to record. My mom, who handles communications at the organization she's at, she's like, I'm totally not surprised. Like, this is a complex, it's interesting to me how many simple tasks actually are pretty complex. And that's what I'm trying to get better at, is those simple setups, quote unquote simple, actually breaking them down a little bit more efficiently, even though I am decent at estimating how much time it's going to take me to figure out. Like, it would just take some stress factor out of it, if any of that made sense.
Sure. Mike, did you want to follow up on that?
Well, I think what I was thinking about, I was watching these, and these are really familiar to me because of my old day job 20 years ago as an electronics engineer. We would do these things, and I worked with a lot of people that were way more familiar with this kind of milestone setting. But one of the things that I found that was really helpful in the kind of work that we do as creatives is that I kind of do a little bit of preliminary work. And for those of you who have been seeing me before, you've always seen the little whiteboard behind me that's just covered with stuff. It's my way of just throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks. And then I take things and put it into electronic form so that I can communicate with others so that they can be a little bit more clear. But I let myself go real blue sky and really crazy on different ideas. And I try to visualize them by writing them down where I can see them every day in my office. And I can then try to prioritize, like what Steve's talking about. What is the thing that I want to do first? What's the priority? Is it the ed project, or is it some kind of long-term thing that will have a lot of impact in my livelihood further on? It's just a way of at least for me, I try to throw things together in a visual way, and I think what you're showing us, Eric, is a way to codify it and make it more precise when you're collaborating.
Yeah, it's really helpful in collaboration for sure, because you can delegate, and it's also, a lot of us here are artists, and so this is also something on the weekends or whenever I've got a couple hours to just play music. I often really avoid this, right? And try to have a more, I really try to, this strategy is great for knocking stuff out. It's great for engineering an album, or, bringing together a group, or, getting a large scale art installation up. But it's not something I lean on a lot for as like a creative tool, right? It's much more about, okay, what's the job that needs to get done? And what's the most efficient way that I can do it? And what's the best way I can not spend time doing projects I don't need? There was a couple great, Beth and Nicole had this really cool, couple great comments about just moving the needle and the time we waste on stuff. Absolutely. And Beth, you're saying the executive function coach, and we call it planning and prioritization. You put the big words, planning and prioritization in order to address task initiation. Beth, where are you? Give us a little background on that.
Yeah. So I have this really kind of cutesy little strategy. Here, Steve, this is Strategy Toolbox 101. It's called a ABC 1, 2, 3. It's just like, if you can use a planner, which kids don't like to use, the ones I work with usually, I have them write things down. So get your tasks written down on your daily planner. So this is this is the whole, not a Kanban concept, but kind of ties in nicely with it. And then they have too much written down. They're freaking out, right? So it's really hard to get any task finished. So what they do is, like, let's look at them and prioritize them with an A, a B, or a C. It's due tomorrow, due tonight, whatever, it's an A. If it's due in a couple of days, B. If it's a long-term project, put a C on it. And then they have to go through and give just a 1 on the A, an A1, A2, A3, A4, and they can do it that way. If those are a lot of A's and you got to get them done, and then they go through the B's. So then actually when they need to start, they don't think anymore about the task that they have to do, because they've already offloaded that and put it on paper. Now all they do is just do A1. Now they're done with A1. It's kind of like stacking, and then they'll do A2. All the A's are finished and they can move on to B. So it's kind of a method of just planning and prioritizing. There's a lot of other ones, but that's just the kind of cutesy one I use.
Beth, have you ever read the book by Anne Lamott called Bird by Bird?
No, I love Anne Lamott, though.
Oh my gosh, it's the most awesome story of stack ranking. But it's really, it's I guess that's what it is. It's just, I think you'd really dig that.
Yeah,
Anne
and I
Lamott's
love
Bird by Bird.
Can't go wrong.
Anyway, if anyone has more questions about this, I could talk about this all day, because I'm totally into it and it's really fun. I also have to tell you, there's a new tool. This is just a quick thing. I've been really getting into Rome research. I don't know if you guys have heard of this. It's a new company, but it's a research tool and a note-taking tool that is amazing in that they have very little direction on how to use it. A lot of their users are kind of self-perpetuating how it works. It's Rome, R-O-A-M. I spent a weekend learning it about a month ago. It is so powerful, and it uses this idea called bidirectional linking to link your ideas together. And I'm using that, and I use that for more of my planning and my research. And I'd love to do a whole mastermind on it sometime. Yeah, so it's well worth checking out if you haven't heard of it yet. So let's, gosh, this was so cool. Again, if you want to talk more about this, please hit me up. I'd love to chat about it. We can talk about a couple things. One of the things that I guess really the idea that I wanted to share this week was the encouragement after that post I made about are you good at business, right? And what that means to you, and just all the DMs and the comments and everybody discussing that, and how emotional that was for so many people. And at the end of the day, every single person was good at business, because there's so many things, there's so many facets of business, right? Just like there's facets of everything we do. whether you're really good at if you're great at ideation, like Tony Parlapiano is like, I'm so good at coming up with these ideas, but I can't push them out there. It's like, you hire somebody to do that for you, right? What you're saying, Cheryl, like, so you can focus on your product and your classes. You get somebody else to market that. Like, you call someone like Nicole, have them be good at their business so you can be good at your business, because we can't be good at everything, right? And that was the kind of thing that really came out of that whole conversation, is that wide range. Is the people like, oh, I've got an MBA, I'm so good at business, or I'm really not good at, and what does that even mean? And at the end of the day, I think that it's too generic of a term to just throw around and say, oh, I'm good at business or I'm not good at business. And I think people use that to justify different places they are in their existence, or where they are with their business, or just not being comfortable talking about it. And I would just encourage everybody to just like we do this Kanban boards, to stack rank what you're good at, what you enjoy doing. You make the courses, you got to market them, you got to build the web pages. The accounting is awful. I don't touch that stuff. The things that you don't like, the fact that I'm no good at finance or accounting, I don't think makes me a poor business person, right? And the people that do that for me, they're great at it. So anyway, I hope that's an encouragement. And if anybody has thoughts on that, we could have a brief discussion on it. But I wanted to share that. But the big idea at the end of the day is I wanted to hear what Steve had to say on this concept of value. I don't know if that's cool, Steve. I'm just going to throw you around the stop.
Oh,
but you had a really great thing to share that I wanted to hear.
Oh yeah, you had set that one up for me. Yeah, you asked the question about value and what we value in business, and a couple things. One is we all have inherent value as human beings, and we're very valuable to our families and networks and all of that. And I think that's sort of a separate idea than the idea of when we talk about value as a business, the idea of like, what's something that we offer that people are eager to pay for. And it's a problem when we get that mixed up. Like if someone doesn't want to pay our rate, they say, well, they don't think I'm a valuable person. And in some way, I don't even like necessarily the word value if we're talking about in the business sense, because might need another word. But that sometimes if people aren't taking you up on your offer or paying you what I guess it's not like charging what we are worth. It's about what kind of impact the work makes. Here, can I just have like a couple minutes? I've queued this thing up. I've been doing some presentations, some universities for like music majors on like freelancing and being an independent business person.
Heck yeah!
And I had been, I had some slides kind of, because a lot of the advice I got by well-meaning people when I was younger, about when I was younger, people had said, oh, well, you don't want to go into music, you'll die poor and lonely. You should get a real job and play on the side. So the job that advice that I got, that there's a lot of stories people tell about money that aren't really true, or they're not true enough of the time to be a rule. That's what. So I was going through all of these frames. It's getting to the point I was making in the Fons. Let's see. Do I have my little thing?
Not true enough to make enough of the time to make a rule. That's great. So
there's a lot of those, especially with money. And I've been thinking about this stuff a lot, and with value, and largely, I mean, that's what has helped me be totally not have a day job and support myself since like 2003, kind of like figuring out all this stuff and kind of keeping me afloat during pandemic time. So I've got these. This is just part of this thing, the presentation I was given I've got one coming up at Wazoo. But yeah, about frames, kind of stories we're telling ourselves. I'm just going to blast through some of these, but some of these about money that we get wrong a lot. So it's the confused llama. I do this. I get their attention with novelty slides instead of bullet points. It's kind of my Seth Godin way of doing this. But some of these stories about money, before I get to the point I talked about at Fons, but yeah, do what you love and the money. These are these frames that aren't really true enough of the time. Like some people love what they do, but we know this one's not always true. Just because you love it, well, that doesn't mean that the money's going to follow. Right? We always hear time equals money. I mean, if you're an employee, but a lot of things we do take a lot of time and don't generate money. Or if you've got a product, it doesn't have to be tied to time. I'm just going through these way too quick. If you work harder, you'll get paid more. Well, a lot of us know that there's not a direct relation there. It can be. Whatever. Oh yeah, if I get my doctorate, that means I'll get paid better. It can, depending on your job. If you're a public school teacher and you get your master's, you get a pay bump. But for the rest of us, not so much. If financial security comes from having a job. Again, these are these like not true enough statements that I don't think these are good rules. They can be true. That you only earn more if you're doing something that's miserable. Like the only reason you get someone to pick up the trash is because no one would just do it on their own, so you have to pay them to do it, right? So people do that with gigs. Oh, that gig was fun. I shouldn't have to get paid. I'm not expecting to get paid for the fun gigs. But sort of, yeah, starving artist thing that if money's involved, it makes the art worse, which isn't. It can be true, but selling out isn't like maybe as sort of this mainstream media idea that doesn't really happen anymore. But what I was getting to in this talk, kind of getting to the the point that I was talking about in Fons. I'll not talk about this at the moment. Yeah, that it's really about solving a problem or satisfying a desire that people know that they have. That is it. Then you can kind of, and that even if you help the problem doesn't mean that's going to be monetized, but at a bare minimum. So if you're trying to sell something that like nobody actually wants or doesn't solve a urgent problem, it might be a really cool side project, but it's not going to be something that people pay for. So this is sort of like always thinking, okay, what's the underlying problem or desire? It doesn't matter that whether or not I think I'm good at the saxophone or I went to school for a long time or I worked really hard. There's just not a direct relation there. And if it doesn't like tap in to that, and then here's the slide based on what I posted on Fons the other day that, yeah, Tara McMullen, one of my favorite business strategists, value is transformation. Like there's a clear before and after. So there's a before, then you're really tired, and then you buy a cup of coffee, and the transformation is you feel good. It feels good when you drink it. You're more awake later. There's a clear before and after. You can talk about it, and like that's what the value is.
The value is transformation,
and it's largely a kind of transformation that people understand ahead of time, and they know it's something they want. So that is the huge thing. And she has another little quote in here I use. This is good. I need to read.
I think both of those are really great. I think your first one is such a great point too, which is that you need to solve this problem or satisfy a desire.
Yeah. And then I'll post a link to this thing, this value pyramid from Harvard Business School. It's sort of all these things. You can take anything you do, whether there's the lower levels, the functional, simplifies, reduces cost, those kind of things. And as you go toward the top, you get to self-actualization, self-transcendence, what we're providing as artists. I'll provide a link to this because almost anything you do will fall into one of these categories. And if it doesn't, there's an issue. There was another thing that Tara said that I think about this all the time. Stop promoting and start resonating. Instead of just like trying to blast and spam everyone with your whatever you're trying to sell. Like the more that your message just like deeply resonates with people, then the business part tends to flow a whole lot more naturally if you have a message that really deeply makes an impact with people rather than the advert. So making the resonance part of making that the strategy rather than just like spamming people with ads. So that's anyway, that was my very, very quick crash course on this like 90-minute presentation. But yeah, the value is transformation. Just put these little things in that are kind of always things that are top of mind on the business side, which is not, it's different. If I'm making a record, other kind of creative projects I'm doing, I know oftentimes they provide tremendous value for me doing the projects, but kind of those are the frames that at least seem to be more true enough of the time that it really helps as a strat or just sort of some kind of map. And I think a lot of us get this wrong a lot of the time. We have something that we think is cool, but we haven't really mapped out the transformation, or what you're offering isn't a change that people really care about. I mean, that's why I'm realizing I'm getting some traction out of this course, because some of these band directors see it and say, OS, I'm just buried with my remote learning now. I don't know what I'm going to do, and here's something that makes my life easier and the kids like it. Like, I need this thing right now, not like my other projects where it's been like, oh, Steve, I'm like, here's something that I think is kind of interesting, and let me explain why you should think it's interesting. It just doesn't quite fly the same way. But we can do this, we're teaching, someone now, oh, there's a kid that really needs help with their instrument. They're struggling and isn't able to keep up with their band, or, with whatever our coaching is, whatever that most, like, just what's the most immediate desire problem. Anyway, that's my
Steve, thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
That is so cool. And I want to, I'm sure other people, hopefully that resonates with you as with whatever you're working on. It sure does with me. And before I turn it over to other people talking, I I've been really diving deep on this idea of value, not just as, it's the intrinsic worth of what we're doing, right? But also like value is a noun, but it's also a verb, right? We value something, and looking at it from these different, and are we living our lives in congruence with what we value, right? Which I think that is a great way to resonate with people, right? That's where authenticity comes from. And being okay with that. So anyway, that's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. Would someone like to pipe, like Nicole, would you want to say something?
Oh my God, I have so many things I could say about this. This is like sales psychology, marketing. I get so nerdy about this. Yes. Yeah, that's like literally one of my courses is literally called Create Your Career, because that is the transformation, right? But that's one of the big things that I teach in there. Like the very first thing we talk about is figuring out your niche. And oh God, especially like people who are just like, well, I just want to teach flute lessons. I'm like, okay, well, if you just go build your website and say, well, I can teach flute lessons to anyone who wants to learn how to play flute. Like, sure, that may be true, but like, what problem are you solving? Like if a parent is going on Google and searching for Austin flute lessons, they're going to have, 50 tabs pulled up with all the 50 flute teachers, and it's going to be, so-and-so, and I play flute and I can teach lessons and I have, 10 years experience. And like every website, thinking of websites, is going to look the same. But if you can get to, your website and talk about their problems. So maybe you specialize in, I don't know, students with like a learning disability or something, you can make your copy, the language, the messaging, which we're going to use in literally everything, your social media posts, your marketing, advertising, websites, even when you speak. Like these are the things that you should be using when you're speaking and like talking to new students, right? And they get to your website and it's like, and maybe it's parents that primarily book the lessons for their students, so knowing those things, so that way you can write like, hey, is your kid has gone through teacher after teacher and they just can't seem to progress because their attention span quits after 5 minutes and they can't retain any information. Like, guess what? Like, I feel you, because I'm the same way. And that's exactly why I've designed my lessons to work with students who have short attention spans, blah, blah, blah. Like, that's going to speak directly to them. And that's also like a marketing sales psychology thing. Like the amount of money that you make in general is going to be directly tied to the problem that you can solve. The bigger the problem, like the bigger the pain point that you are resolving for people, the more money you're going to be able to make. And it's like, I see a lot of, like when people come to us and they're like, oh, my marketing's not working, blah, blah, blah. Like say they have a book and they just put it on their website, or a coaching program or a course, whatever, the problem that I usually see is they're not talking about that transformation. They're like, hey, here's my etude book and it's spiral bound and it's blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, great. Like, guess what? Nobody cares. Like, sorry, love you, but nobody cares. Like, why is this going to make my life better or easier? Like, that's why people buy. And so by hitting on those, like that transformation, like after you read this book, you will know exactly how to use Instagram to book consistent clients, bring in consistent inquiries every single week, right? Like that's a transformation. That's very clear. So that is definitely, put that in all of your marketing materials and watch your conversions increase.
Yeah. And Steve, that's really awesome. And Steve followed up on that, which is that on what you were saying, as you were saying it, which is once you have your niche, you can charge more, because if anybody's doing what you're doing, you have to compete. And if you're just you being you really don't, there's no competition. That's beautiful. Thanks, Nicole. Wow. Thanks, Steve. Thanks, everybody. Did someone else want to say something? I have to go in just a second. Did someone have something they'd want to share or would like to kind of just...
I had a question. I had a question to Steve. Steve, real quick. How long did you workshop that particular presentation with other people before you started doing the presentation to these band directors? How did that process work? That might be a long answer, but I'm just curious how you workshop that.
For the course or for the thing I just presented on?
Both.
So my course, I've been teaching these workshops in person for like 15 years, and I found the topics that people most wanted and brought me back year after year to do the same thing. and like word spread about it. So it was all through in-person workshops, and then during kind of had a little light bulb moment during remote teaching when I just had to put everyone on mute and I'd play and they'd play back and I couldn't hear them. And I was like, why does this have to be at the same time? I can just I can't hear them anyway. Might as well pre-record it. And then I helped, and then I made like a trial version and had people, I think Eric saw, I just posted it before I created it. I posted on Facebook and I was like, hey, band directors, I'm thinking of making an interactive intro to improvisation course you can use during remote learning. You can check it out for free. Who wants to try it? And I got like 100 comments. I tagged band teachers. And then since I knew they wanted it, then I made the free one and people started checking it out and they got feedback and donate. So I had my target market. I had people that I had worked with and built relationships in the past. They were helping me develop the thing all the way along. For that last thing, it was a talk that I wanted to do, and I just threw up some ideas that I'd been rattling with, and that was for a presentation at Central Washington University, and they wanted me to do a talk on it. I was kind of excited to just put the slides together. I like doing that anyway, because I knew I'd be using that, and yeah, because it's sort of in conjunction with the guest artist thing. I came and performed and did like coaching and all that. Then there was a couple workshops I would do, like a master class, and I wanted to present on this rather than maybe a more specific saxophone topic or something like that, because it was some oftentimes these schools, they don't touch on that at all. It's like, hey, we're going to help you with the craft of the music and then the business will take care of itself. Or you're learning from someone who's had a cushy 10-year job for 30 years and hasn't had to like hustle for any work anytime recently. So it's a cool gig if you get it, but they're not the ones that's going to help a 19-year-old out figuring out what's going on. So that's kind of a long answer, but for the business, I always have certain people in mind and people that I built relationships with over the years. It's never in a vacuum.
It's like not asking your friends with a trust fund for business advice.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you, Steve. Hey, everybody, thank you so much for coming. This was really awesome stuff. I have to run. I could talk about this stuff all day. Nicole, thank you for joining us for the first time. Everybody else, it was great to see you. I'll post this a little bit later. If there's some follow-up questions, we can add these into the Fons family group once I post this up, but I feel like this conversation can definitely continue. But thank you everyone for coming, and I'm looking forward to seeing you next week. And this Friday vibe's pretty good, right? It's like kind of end of week instead of middle. It's nice. So thank you all so much for coming. Have a great day, and I'll see you soon.
Thanks.
Zoom wave.